Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Sodanandana Vrajadana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya Astatara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, Devahuti's Lamentation, Text 52. Brahman, Duhitrabish, Tubhyam, Vrimrigya, Pataya, Samaha, Kashchit, Syan, Me, Vishokaya, Tvai, Pravrajite, Vanam, Brahmanduhitra Bistubhyam Vimrigya Pataya Samaha Kashtit Sanme Vishokaya Toi Pravrajite Vanam Brahmanduhitra Bistubhyam Vimrigya Pataya Samaha Kashtit Sanme Vishokaya Sai Pravrajite Vanam Brahmanduhitra Vistubhyam Vimrigya Pataya Samaha Kashtit Sanme Vishokaya Sai Pravrajite Vanam Vaishnavis. Brahman, my dear Brahmana, Duhitrabihi, by the daughters themselves, Tubhyam, for you, Vimrigyaha, to be found out, Patayaha, husbands, Samaha, suitable, Kashchit, someone, Syat, there should be, may, my, Vishokaya, for solace, Tvayi, when you, Parajate, departed, Vanam, to the forest. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My dear Brahman, as far as your daughters are concerned, they will find their own suitable husbands and go away to their respective homes. But who will give me solace after your departure as a sannyasi? Purport. It is said that the Father himself becomes the Son in another form. The Father and Son are therefore considered to be non-different. A widow who has her son is actually not a widow because she has the representative of her husband. Similarly, Devahuti was indirectly asking Kardama Muni to leave a representative so that in his absence she might be relieved of her anxieties by a suitable son. A householder is not expected to remain at home for all his days. After getting his sons and daughters married, a householder can retire from household life, leaving his wife in the charge of the grown-up sons. That is the social convention of the Vedic system. Devahuti is indirectly asking that in his absence from home, there be at least one male child to give her relief from her anxieties. This relief means spiritual instructions. Relief does not mean material comforts. Material comforts will end with the end of the body, but spiritual instruction will not end. It will go on with the spirit soul. Instruction and spiritual advancement is necessary, but without having a worthy son, how could Devahuti advance in spiritual knowledge? It is the duty of the husband to liquidate his debt to his wife. The wife gives her sincere service to the husband, and he becomes indebted to her because one cannot accept service from his subordinate without giving him something in return. The spiritual master cannot accept service from a disciple without awarding him spiritual instruction. That is the reciprocation of love and duty. Thus, Devahuti reminds her husband, Kardama Muni, that she has rendered him faithful service. Even considering this situation on the basis of liquidating his debt toward his wife, he must give a male child before he leaves. Indirectly, Devahuti requests her husband to remain at home a few days more, or at least until a male child is born. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, it is said that the Father himself becomes the Son in another form. The Father and Son are therefore considered to be non-different. This principle comes up in another part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, in the connection with King Dushmanta. So this King Dushmanta was out in the forest one day hunting, and he came to the hermitage, the cottage of the sage Kanva. And he saw there a beautiful young woman. Her name was Shakuntala, and she was the daughter of Vishvamritra and the Apsara Menaka. And she had been left in the forest by her parents, and the sage Kanva had raised her. So the king didn't know this, so he just approached her and said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, yeah, my father and mother left me here. Kanva knows all about it." And he kind of persisted. You appear to be the daughter of a Kshatriya. In other words, you're a nice princess and you don't appear to have any husband. And she said, "Yes, that's true, my dear Lord, but you can stay here if you like. You know, I'll make some rice for you." So just like Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, Devahuti is trying to communicate things to Kardama Muni indirectly, So indirectly, the king was saying, I'd like you to be my wife. And by offering to have him there and she would cook for him, she was indirectly saying, yes, I'd like you as my husband. So the Dushmanta said, I never do anything against religious principles. And according to our culture, a princess in your position is allowed to have her Swayamvara. She can choose her own husband. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that in the Vedic culture there were several different kinds of marriage that were allowed. One of them being the Gandharva principle of marriage, which is marriage by agreement. Of course, Srila Prabhupada didn't introduce this, so we don't follow that. But according to the Vedic culture at that time, it was allowed to have a Gandharva marriage, a marriage by agreement, which is fulfilled by, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the chanting of Aum and some other little ritualistic things. So the king Dushmanta married Shakuntala according to that system, and they had a child, but he left them and didn't support them. So at a certain point, Shakuntala and her son went to the king's city, and they requested that he support them. And initially he refused to do it. So a voice came from the sky making the same point that Srila Prabhupada mentions in the first line of this purport, namely that the Father becomes the Son. So that was directly stated by this voice that came from the sky. K Vak, it's called. K means the sky or the ether, and Vak means voice. And the voice is described as Ashirani, without a body. So this disembodied voice from the sky said to King Dushmanta, that's your wife, that's your child, you're actually your son is actually you in another form. So you should support your wife and children. Don't insult Shakuntala and support your son. So he did that after this voice from the sky came. So that's one point. Another point being made here is that the husband has a debt to the wife, and this is compared to the debt that a spiritual master has to a disciple, in the sense that just like the husband has to make some arrangement for the wife's deliverance from material life, the spiritual master, by accepting service from a disciple, has the duty to instruct the disciple in spiritual life. And there's one verse from the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, spoken by Lord Rishabdev to his sons. Gururna sasyaj svajanona sasyat. I'll do it line by line. One shouldn't become a spiritual master. One shouldn't become a relative, to somebody. Like if somebody is an uncle or an aunt or a grandfather or any type of relative of someone, they have a duty to their relative. And pitana sasat, jananina sasat. Don't become a father or a mother without taking responsibility for the child. Daivam natasyan patis na patis chasasyan. Don't become a worshipable deity. You know, sometimes people in society, they become elevated in some way. They have a position in society where they're famous and they're recognized. Well, they also have a responsibility. And to become a husband, a pati, one has a responsibility. And what is that responsibility? Namochayet, what's the, yeah. You have to be able to free the dependent from the cycle of birth and death. So Krishna takes that responsibility. You know, he says he's the seed-giving father of all living things. Aham bija pradhan. So he takes that responsibility. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahunam yo vididati kaman. There are all the spirit souls, and Krishna is the source of all of them. And he takes the responsibility, out of all of them, he takes the responsibility for maintaining the others. So in human society, if we take any of these positions of responsibility, we have the responsibility of ensuring that those who take shelter of us, either as husband or wife or parent or ruler or guru, we have the responsibility to ensure that our dependents are on the path of liberation from the cycle of birth and death and being situated in their eternal relationships with Krishna. So that's another point that Srila Prabhupada makes in this purport, the responsibility, in this case, of the husband to provide a male child who can give protection to the wife in the absence of the husband. So, this is mentioned, Srila Prabhupada mentions love and duty. So, yes, we're trying to develop love for Krishna, but that doesn't mean there is no type of affectionate relationship with others. We can see in this pastime that Swayambhuva Manu has a very loving relationship with his daughter, Devahuti. We see that Devahuti and Kardama Muni have a very loving relationship, but it's all in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If Krishna is in the center, then all our relationships with others will be properly adjusted. So, another point that's mentioned here is that in the Varnashram system, the normal progression is that one goes through the various ashramas, the brahmachari ashram, the grihastha ashram or householder ashram, the vanaprast or retired ashram, and for brahmanas, the sannyas ashram, complete renunciation. And Krishna has established this system himself. Daiva Varnashram, because in his meeting with Ramananda Roy in South India, Lord Chaitanya asked him, "Tell me about spiritual life. What is the perfection of it?" And Ramananda Roy went through various proposals, and including in the practice of Varnashrama, which is good, Lord Chaitanya said, but it's not complete. There's more. So the ultimate situation is to be situated in one's Svarupa, in one's eternal loving relationship with Krishna. That is the ultimate. But as a step towards that in human society, in the material world, principles of Varna and Ashrama are necessary if they are centered on Krishna and advancing in Krishna consciousness. So, in one sense, it's part of nature. At a certain age, children are freed from sex desire, ultimately. And when they become older, then marriage becomes a possibility. And in most cases, it's like that. But then, beyond that, there's retirement. At a certain stage of life, even by nature, husband and wife can no longer have children, can no longer work so hard to achieve their goals. And there's a stage of retirement. You know, some couples, when they become older like that, they buy a Recvi, drive around to different places. And then finally, by the arrangement of time, there's separation, complete renunciation. So this natural feature of life is systematically organized in the Vedic system of Varna and Ashrama, which Krishna created. So this pastime can be looked at on many different levels, on the levels of Varnashrama, on the level of loving relationships among devotees of the Lord, of loving relationship between the Lord and his devotees. It can be looked at in terms of the responsibility of husband to wife. It can be looked at in terms of the relationship of the father to a son. So it can be looked at on many different levels, but it's included in Srimad Bhagavatam because it's ultimately centered on Krishna. Yes, Devahuti is going to get a son. She is going to give her the knowledge that's necessary for her liberation from the cycle of birth and death. It's going to be the story of Lord Kapila and his teachings to his mother. So those are the points that I wanted to make today. Is there any comment or question? Yes, Maharaj.
Sometimes we get the criticism from especially New Age people that this is patriarchal and it's old-fashioned and hasn't worked, and so we want equality, men and women, something like that.
What do they want to do?
They want to make women and men equal.
Well, how does this go against that principle?
Because the man is in, you're suggesting that Varnashram, the man is the more responsible one. He has to be responsible for his wife, and therefore he's in a superior position.
I don't know that that's being exactly said here. I mean, just looking at it, the wife is making a request of the husband, and the husband is in the position of being, according to the purport here, a debtor to the wife. So it doesn't seem like he's taking an exploitative position, just in this case. Maybe there are other cases where he does, but it seems like they're negotiating.
Now that's a good point.
At least in this particular point, I'm not saying if you look at every single case that you can't find something that would appear to be consistent with what you're suggesting, that there's some kind of exploitative relationship going on there. As a matter of fact, when King Dushmanta appeared to take a position like that he wasn't responsible, he was corrected according to this. So he said, don't insult your wife, Shakuntala. Don't ignore your child. So seems that in these particular cases, it doesn't appear to be of that nature. Archita?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thanks for a nice class. Any system can be exploited. So the Vedic culture, if you look at it externally and you're not informed, you may think it's exploitative, but it's not. Everybody has a particular set of responsibilities. Responsibility doesn't mean exploitation. Just like in general, parents are responsible for their children. Doesn't mean that they can exploit them. But in some cultures, they do. They think because we're in a superior position, we can exploit our children, even up to the point of killing them, as happened recently in some Asian country. The daughter wanted to marry somebody outside the immediate culture, and the father had both of them killed because he thinks the daughter belongs to me and she has to do what I say. That's not the Vedic culture. The Vedic culture is everybody has responsibility. And if you fulfill your responsibility, then everything runs nicely. But we see, even in so-called democracy, we see what's happening now. People are acting irresponsibly in their positions. And it just creates havoc. It creates dissension. It creates fighting. So any system can be exploited, whether it's autocracy, monarchy, democracy, equality, whatever. Because, yeah, people think, we should all be equal, but I'm more equal than you. As Surya used to say, everybody is more or less crazy except for you and me. And I'm not so sure about you. So any system can be exploited. That means education has to be there. Don't exploit, because ultimately everything and everyone belongs to Krishna, the Ishavasya principle.
Well, I'll add something. Everybody may be crazy except you and me, but I got questions about myself. Okay. Anything? Yes?
Hare Krishna. What if a husband, he produce only children, girl child, husband, he produce only girl child, who will protect woman in this case?
Okay.
Wife.
Ultimately, everyone has to have an insurance policy, in case one is put into a difficult situation. So, ultimately, it's Krishna who's maintaining everyone. So if one takes shelter of Krishna, then one will be protected. Because Krishna says that he always protects his devotees. He said it to Arjuna. So, but if one has one could take shelter of some other relative, or the king. There can be others like that. Does anybody have any other answer to his question? Yeah. Okay, Satchidananda, did he go? Oh, there he is.
There is, as far as responsibility, I was thinking in a verse that says, Devarsi bhutapta nainam pitrinam nakinkaro rayan rinicha rajan. And in that verse it says that one who has surrendered to Mukunda, the one who gives liberations, doesn't have to account by any responsibility with the sages, demigods, and included relatives. So assuming that someone in the name of spirituality prematurely goes to, I'm going to renounce everything, my children, my wife, and everything, but actually, and then he just wants to take shelter of Krishna, is that actually bona fide?
Well, if they're actually totally surrendered to Krishna, they don't have any further debt. Like Srila Prabhupada's example, he took sannyas, I think, before all his children were married, as far as I can recall. You know, but if one actually is not on that platform, then one's debt is still there. So, but even we find that Srila Prabhupada made some arrangement for the support of his family members when he departed this world. Any further comments on that?
Well, I was just thinking that actually in our experience, sometimes we have seen, or I've seen sannyasis taking running away from that responsibility. Later on, they actually realize it was not proper. They come back again, or not just one, but maybe a few. So if it's sanctioned, like you said, like Prabhupada did it, in certain cases, that's different, because they were following the order as superior order, and the pure devotee can do anything.
Yes, Maharaj.
If they're cheating, then they get bad karma. Prabhupada was beyond karma. He was transcendental. On the transcendental world, there's no karma. If you're still in the material side, then you do something improper like that, then you're going to suffer today or tomorrow.
Okay. Oh. Go ahead. Maharaj wants to say something.
No, I just want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
In this world, there are almost 10 billion people. Of that, just we are like 0.00001% devotees in all over the world. And we are here in Rukmani Dwarkadhish temple, we're talking about Vedic culture. And when we go out, we see just there are pilot officers, there are army officers, there are Navy officers, there are Air Force officers. There are so many executive positions the women they are holding. How we are going to preach to them just the Vedic culture that women has to remain under the guidance of the husband?
That's our business. First, you have to have proper husbands. Yeah. Have to train proper husbands, and then everything will fall into place. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.